What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to Plaisant's podcast filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we are continuing our college football preview. We're going to be talking about the Colorado Buffaloes, the most exciting, most talked about team in the country, especially 3 weeks into the year when they're 3-0. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Talk about the stars. Shedeur Sanders, obviously, Deion Sanders' son. Perfect timing. This is the guy, quarterback, one of the best in the country. I think he's going to be a first-round pick this year. On the defensive side of the football, Travis Hunter. And honestly, on the offensive side of the football, he had, I think, 700 receiving yards last year, but he missed several games. When it comes to the best player in football, I have to give it to Travis Hunter just because of what he can do at any point in the game, on any part of the field, offense, defense. I mean, if you put him on special teams, this guy's going to be electric. Probably the best player in all of college football, can do it all. Travis Hunter, he's the guy. He is going to be a first-round pick this year. Now, let's go ahead and get into a couple storylines, talk about the losses and additions because there's quite a few. But the first thing I want to talk about, this is a volatile program. And I say that positively and negatively. I mean, Deion Sanders comes in last year. There are like 50 transfers out, but they bring in 50 transfers. They take this Colorado team from being a 0-win, 1-win, 2-win program, and they start off the season with major wins versus TCU, versus Nebraska. They even beat Colorado State, their in-state rival. I think that what he's doing there is wonderful. However, there are some drawbacks. All of these transfers out, you got to build continuity as a coach, and I think that he's trying very hard to be competitive instantly, which obviously we know Deion Sanders, the player and the coach, is nothing but a competitor. He wants to go out and actually try to win football games as quickly as possible, which I think is a really good thing, but it does come with some drawbacks. We've seen 90 transfers in the last 2 years, and while those guys that are leaving are probably not best fit for the program, it doesn't bode well when you have all of these guys going out. You bring in new guys, they aren't that good, you lose games, you criticize them, they leave, and then you try to bring in more. I think this is going to be the season that is going to be the hinge year for Colorado, and specifically Deion Sanders and this style of program, I guess. We haven't really seen it to this extent in college football until he's arrived at Colorado. So I think whether or not Colorado is successful is going to be extremely important for building programs like this in the future, especially for Deion Sanders. So let's go ahead and get into the losses and additions. Losses side of things, Dylan Edwards, your leading rusher. Now, he only had 300 yards, but I thought he was extremely talented. This guy transfers to Kansas State. Xavier Weaver, I think. Yes, Xavier Weaver. He graduates, goes to the NFL. He was the leading receiver last year. Amorion Cooper, he was one of the best corners on this Colorado team. He transfers to FSU. Cormani McClain, a touted 5-star recruit. I thought he was going to see a lot of time last year. Deion Sanders held him back for maturity reasons and practice issues. He transfers to Florida. Those are some major losses in my opinion, but there's a lot more behind all of that. The addition side of things, BJ Green, the best player at Arizona State last year, defensive end, he transfers in. I think that's going to be a good addition to this Colorado team. The front seven needed a lot of help last year, and they got it now. Will Shepard, wide receiver, comes in from Vanderbilt. He had the most receiving yards at Vanderbilt last year. I thought he was way more talented than his stats really showed. He only had about 600 yards, but I think he could be a 800, 900, even 1,000 yard receiver, and I think Colorado with Shedeur Sanders is going to take advantage of that. Now, what the most important addition was to this Colorado team was depth at the offensive line. Last year, Shedeur Sanders, most sacked quarterback in college football. Colorado gave up the second most sacks in the Division I or in FBS. So I think that it's going to be extremely important that this offensive line depth actually develops and transforms into something of an iron curtain. Okay, now that's going to be my first storyline to talk about after the losses and additions. Can Colorado's offensive line hold up? Colorado had one of the best passing attacks in all of college football when Shedeur Sanders was not getting sacked. Like I said, Colorado gave up the second most sacks in the country. Deion Sanders was very critical of this offensive line, and to be honest, rightfully so. They were not good last year. They could really not run the ball. They were always down big and having to pass. Pass rushers were teeing off on the tackles. They get 2 new tackles this year. I think that's extremely important. Shedeur Sanders is probably going to have more time, but if it's not a lot more time, then I can't really see Colorado improving as much as people are projecting them to. But I do have faith that this depth is going to be a really positive addition. Last but not least, their defense last year was one of the worst in the country. It was every offense was a hot knife, and Colorado's defense was the butter, and they just ran right through it. I think that these additions that they've added to the front seven and to the secondary, paired with Travis Hunter, a healthy Travis Hunter, and a pretty good Shiloh Sanders. I know he's not one of the best safeties in the country, but I do think he's got the playmaking ability of his father. This is going to be a much improved Colorado defense, and I think pairing that with a weaker schedule than last year, I do think that they can win some games. So now, let's go ahead and get into the record prediction. Colorado starts off the season on fire, hosting North Dakota State at Nebraska. Now, to me, this is the hinge game. If Colorado cannot beat Nebraska, they are in trouble for the season. I do think they can get that win. Nebraska has a true freshman quarterback likely. I don't think I trust true freshman quarterbacks in massive games, especially to start the year with no experience. So I will give Colorado the win there. Obviously, they got the win versus North Dakota State, although that is a sneaky game. They could lose that game if they're not up to par with what I'm predicting. So 2-0 at Colorado State. It was very close last year. It will not be very close this year. That's a win. Versus Baylor at home, I will give them another win. Home field advantage. Baylor is not there yet in terms of competitiveness. So starting off the year 4-0, going at UCF. KJ Jefferson is a dangerous dual threat quarterback. But I will go ahead and talk about the quarterback-to-quarterback matchup. I think Shedeur Sanders is much better than KJ Jefferson. I will give Colorado the edge there. They have better playmakers at Colorado, so another win. 5-0. The big game of the year, the biggest game of the year. Kansas State at home. That stadium is going to be rocking at 5-0, and I think that they can pull off the massive upset, even though both of these programs I think will be either 5-0 or maybe 6-1 or something like that. Colorado pulls out the upset win, but then they go at Arizona, and I think that offense is way too much for this Colorado defense to handle. I give them their first loss of the year. Then they go host Cincinnati. That team is in a complete rebuild. Scott Satterfield is not yet on par with Deion Sanders' program. We're going to go ahead and give Colorado the win. So what is that? 7-1. Colorado is 7-1, and then the doors fly open at Texas Tech, hosting Utah, at Kansas. I think all three of those games are losses. Not necessarily putting this Colorado team into shambles, but ruining any hopes that they had for a college football playoff or a conference championship game. So 3 straight losses there. I think the 2 road games are really tough. Hosting Utah, I think Utah is a top 10 team in the country, and Colorado, to me, is not close to that. So I give all 3 of those teams the win. Colorado takes the L's, but then they host Oklahoma State, and I think this Oklahoma State team has had a disappointing season. Ollie Gordon did not have the year that everybody was expecting him to have, and so I give Colorado the win there. 8-4, doubling their wins from last year. Extremely impressive stuff. I think they're a really talented program with the chance to upset a lot of teams. Now, if they beat Texas Tech or Kansas, I wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, if they lose to Nebraska or Colorado State, I would also not be shocked. That's what I was talking about with the volatility of this program. But that's going to do it for this episode. Stay tuned next time. We're going to be talking about Houston. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.